We are up to item number 9.4, Electoral Division Boundary Review. Lane, please.
So this item is back before council after having been discussed during your October committee of the whole meeting. Have prepared information for consideration by council. I guess leading into the discussion, I do want to just elaborate a little bit on section 3 in the report, previous council direction and relevant policy. I referenced the fact that the applicable sections in the Municipal Government Act are sections 143 through 151. Just to back up a little bit, there's 3 levels of government in Canada. You've got your federal government, provincial government, and municipal government. By virtue of federal legislation, municipalities are a creature of the province. The province can dictate how those municipalities operate, pass legislation, whether they exist or whether they will not. The Municipal Government Act has legislation that applies to the formation of municipalities, the structure of councils on the municipalities. It does not state that municipalities have a requirement to balance the number of their population across divisions within the municipality. However, the federal government requires that, the provincial government requires that. In both cases, there is statutes that have been passed by the House of Commons and by the Legislative Assembly that dictate that both of those levels of government have to go through a commission, an electoral boundary review commission process on a fixed schedule. Federally, it's every 10 years. Provincially, it can be no less than 8 years, no more than 10 years. So there's a little bit of latitude at the provincial level. Those requirements are in place because of challenges that had been made during previous elections where the challenges were based on electoral representation and misalignment with the principle of equality of votes, one person equals one vote. So that's where it's based on. The city of Lethbridge, the city of Red Deer, the city of Medicine Hat, they elect their councillors at large. So there is no divisions, no ward systems in those communities. Calgary clearly has a ward system in place. The city of Calgary, because of the processes that the federal government and the provincial government goes through, the city of Calgary has a fixed process in place where every, I believe it's 10 years, they go through a review of their ward systems and make sure that the population is distributed evenly across those boundaries as well. The bottom line is you do not have to do this. However, there is always the potential for a disgruntled individual or individuals after an election to challenge an election if you knowingly went into it and the principles of proportional representation were not given consideration. So all we're saying is that in order to make sure that you're not finding yourself in a situation where an election could be challenged on that basis, it would be appropriate to go through a redistribution of the county's population. So with that as a foundation for the discussion, you've got some options before you. We would invite council to consider that and provide some direction as to how you want to proceed, if you're going to proceed at all.
Okay, thank you, Lane. Are there questions? I think that provides some clarity. Now, I have a question just with regard, like on the one hand, you're saying there isn't a requirement for proportional representation at the municipal level, but there can still be a challenge that would suggest that you gave it no consideration.
Well, if someone was prepared to challenge an election, I think that the argument can be made to challenge it on the basis that the population is not evenly distributed.
But that isn't, just for clarity, but that is not in the legislation that legislates our existence. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah. So it would be, okay, it would be case law, yeah.
Yeah. All I'm saying is that when it, provincially and federally, what's good for the goose should be good for the gander. We are creatures of the province.
Yeah.
Those two senior levels of government require that.
Yeah.
This principle
Yeah.
could be argued.
So maybe more likely, a circumstance where somebody would go to municipal affairs and say, it's all out of whack in this county. Somebody needs to fix that, eh? I mean, and I guess the question is how much, you know, I don't think we hear a lot of comment on that, but that's neither here nor there. Anyway, thank you for that information. Greg, please.
Lane, is there any indication, or is there anything that we have set out right now that it needs to be revisited every, say, 10 years? And so right now there's no time frame. We're just, because when was the last time this was looked into?
You have no policy that has been approved by council that says you will go through this process over a fixed period of time. There's nothing in place that we have right now. What we have in place right now is the result of an evolution that has taken place. When the county was first established, there were 9 electoral divisions. After many years, the decision was made to try and rebalance the population by creating a 10th division, where they split the 1 division at the highest population. And so that's where you now have 10 divisions. The legislation, though, states that if municipalities are going to change the number of divisions that have been approved through a ministerial order or regulation, they if they're going to change the number, it has to be a higher or lower odd number.
But there's no stipulation in our policies that say it has to be reviewed every 10 years or so. So let's say if this was done 2 years ago, I think it's, in my opinion, it's still a little bit soon before we start reviewing it again, or else we'll be reviewing it every year. If we did do something, I think it's probably prudent for us to say council needs to look at this, whether they decide to change the number or not, decides to act to put it upon themselves to look at it every 10 years. And then that decision stays for 10 years. And then it's reviewed again, and may make decisions to change or not to change. I think that's not a bad idea to have in the policy. But that's just my opinion.
Thank you, Greg. Kelly and then Neil, please.
When did we change to from 9 to 10? Was that 2008? 5 and
Beyond
10.
that, right back there. So Division 10, what was the year that division?
Oh.
What year was it, Mark?
Oh, it doesn't work because the councilors are jumbled, so it doesn't quite work.
The Division 10 councilor, when that individual was first elected, what year was it? Okay.
So that would be the year?
Yeah.
Okay. So 1987. But I just wanted to, through the chair, remind Councillor Screeber that even though it's in policy, any council into the future can change any decision that we make today or next week or whatever. So putting that 10 years is irrelevant, really. Thank you.
Thank you. Neil, please. How much work have you put into changing a few lines and straightening this out? Just leaving it at 10? But
When we last went through this process, there was a lot of different options that were considered. We looked at 7, we looked at 9, we looked at 10. There's an endless number of options that you can generate by simply moving boundaries, and it can be done. It's just a question of whether or not the first decision the council needs to make is, are you going to engage in that process? Once that decision has been made, then you need to spend some time figuring out what the rules are going to be for going through that process.
Great, thank you. Lynette, please.
Would you be able to tell us how the province goes about moving lines? Like when they go to change numbers, they just move them to what works, right? Like, how does that one work?
Well, both provincially and federally, there's a formal commission, and that commission travels the province. They receive input. There's all that information goes into a black box, and options come out of that, and input is requested from each area. But it's a well-defined process that has been in place for some time.
And at the end of the day, provincially, at least the last one that I was involved in, there's been one since then, I believe, but that's more than 10 years ago. But the commission makes a recommendation and then invites input, and then there's multiple iterations of that until they finally arrive at one that's acceptable. And the government of the day has a big input with regard to how that looks. The last one that was done in Alberta was, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, maybe, prior to the last election.
There's a federal one underway right now.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Dan, please.
I think it'd be hard to make an argument that equalizing our districts is the wrong thing to do. I 100% believe that we should be balancing out our populations. That's what makes democracy work. I think that's very important for us to do. I really do think we should move forward with this, and however we set the policy up, however we do it, and we get good public engagement, we will get good public engagement for sure. But that's what this is all about. If everyone is coming to our forums and saying, we do not want this, we want to have population variances of 400 and something % difference, then I guess that's what they want. But I don't know who would want that. That's every other level of government has to stick within plus minus 25%, and we're at over 400%. That's not right. There's nothing wrong with fixing that. And if we put that out there and let the ratepayers come and voice their concerns on that, then we'll hear it and we'll know what they want. I don't think there's any reason we can't do that.
Okay, thank you. Holly, please. And then Lynette.
I think there are two separate issues here. There's balancing population, and there is looking at if you want to change the number of divisions or reduce them. The county looked at going to 7 divisions about 2 years ago. 18 months ago from now, it was still before the courts because it was settled on June 30th, 2021, and cost the county about 20 grand because they lost. So of the comments that were given, the numbers I have, and I didn't come up with these, is that the comments, 4.8% of the comments were in favor of proposed 7 divisions and 95.2% were not in favor. So I think we look at those numbers because this is an expensive thing. It's not been brought up as a priority by anybody outside of this room, a few people as far as I know. I don't hear people saying in the public that they feel they're not being represented. They feel that, you know, there needs to be change. I'm not saying we can't improve it by drawing some lines and improving it, but I don't think we need to go to the full engagement, reduce, reduce everything, big change, because I just don't feel the public has the appetite for that. And it's a lot of money. And as a council, we've set a priority is economic development. And I would prefer to see us spending our money on things that help with economic development as opposed to this, which doesn't have a net economic development.
Thank you. Neil, yeah.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Dan. It's really hard to argue not to do this. But as far as, isn't there a question for Lane? I think we're just fine with 10 councillors. We're well represented. When you look at our area, we're several different little communities historically, and we've got input that catches every opinion. We seem to work well together. Isn't it just a matter of using your ruler?
Lane?
It can be done. We can go through and redraw some lines and distribute the population. But we need to know if you want to do it, and if you want to, how many electoral divisions is it going to be based on? You're going to find, if it's 10 that you want to move ahead with, and you can, you're going to find that there will be a huge swing in the existing boundary lines. You cannot distribute the county's current population across those 10 individual communities or areas and maintain any semblance of balance between them. There's just been that much of a shift in the population.
Okay, thanks, Lynn. Who did I had Dan and then Lynette and then Holly, yeah.
In response to what Holly had said earlier, there is two questions. Do we balance them? And then if we do balance them, how many? Let's deal with the first question first. Do we want our populations balanced? If we can agree to that, let's get that out of the way first, and then we can decide, do we want 7, 9, 10, 11, 15, 2?
Okay, thank you. Okay, Lynette, please.
Well, this is Matt anyway. What would a cost estimate on either one of those things be looking like?
So it's a $100,000 effort if you want to go to the market. I think Rocky View, we heard, did it, and it was about 90. So it's probably, if you want a consultant to come in and do the exercise, do the public engagement, it's not an insignificant effort. If we were to do it internally, it's going to take some time away from other priorities. But I think really you hit it. Does council want to make this a priority and put effort into it? That's the first question. And then whether you go out-house or in-house, that's another question. And then I think the other one, to kind of get to the comment about council needing to decide whether you go keep it at 10, 9, 7, $20. You could consider, on the scale of public engagement, putting that question to the electorate. What do they want, and put the power in their hands to answer that question. Keep it at 10. We could even punch a survey out and say, should we do it? We could do that and bring that information back for you to inform your decision whether you move forward with it at all. If the public says, no, you're wasting time and money, then maybe you're off the hook for another day.
Okay, thanks. Holly and then Adina.
Well, first back to before, it's actually, if we're going to redraw lines, it's only a couple to be redrawn. It's not the entire area. So when I've looked at the numbers, I think it's actually really simple to fix the couple problems we have. But I do love the idea of asking our ratepayers if that's what they want, because they're the ones who are being affected.
I'll have a comment on that, but go ahead first, Adina.
Well, I just want to say, 3 years ago, there was a lot of people excited about this. So I just wonder, since there was a decision made 3 years ago, do we really want to spend a bunch of money and visit this again? it seems to me like it's kind of, it's not broke, so let's not fix it.
I would tend to agree with you on that. And just the one thing, I mean, input from the public is a good thing. But I think, I mean, what was there, 7 elections in the last year at this time? So the public has had options with regard to that. And at a certain point, they're going to say, well, what's the cost? What's the implication? You know, there's going to be a bunch of unanswered questions that, to what end really? I'm a little bit of the sense too that if it's not broke, and I don't think it is. I think, like others have said, this seems to be quite functional. I also don't know that we're hearing that the representation is causing us problems. I mean, ideally, if it balances, that would be good. But regardless of if we move forward with something here, it will come. Even if we hired an outside consultant, it would have to displace some energy that staff is using on things that I think we have some options for going forward anyway. There are a number of other initiatives that we're looking at going forward that would, well, they either have to require more resources or have to wait or something. And I'm not sure if that's worth it, but go ahead, Neil.
Yeah, I agree with what Matt's suggestion and what Holly said. It won't cost anything to put a questionnaire out there to the public, let them know what's going on. If the thing is broken, or we wouldn't even be talking about this, the proportions aren't right, but I'm cool with them. I think it's functional, but if we put before we go ahead with anything, just find out what everybody else thinks. I don't know how you do that, mail out a letter, mail out a questionnaire. Then we have the information. Other than doing it ourselves and end up going through the same scrap that Ellen and the last council went through.
Okay, thanks. Amanda?
What would we change? How would we do it different than we're not doing already? What are a few lines? I think we're making the best decisions with what we've got. I don't know how we're going to change that by changing lines or divisions.
Thank you. Greg?
Yeah, and I think this was looked at because it was looked 2 years ago, 3 years ago. I agree with Adina in that this has already been done not that long ago. Is it really in our ratepayers' best interest to revisit this again, take up a lot of effort of our staff and ourselves and our ratepayers to rehash a decision that was made 3 years ago? I think maybe in 7 years, yeah, or whatever time. I think it's important. And if it's important for our ratepayers, they would be telling us now that we need to be looking at this. And that's not what I'm hearing from my ratepayers. So from what I understand from the people that I talk to, everything is fine the way it is. And it's not causing any concern.
And thank you. Kelly?
So in defense or in speaking from the past council, the idea came as a money-saving opportunity for the organization. That's what we're here for. It's a business decision. City of Calgary councillors represent 10 times the population that we deal with per councillor. So that's where that came from, for example. Other rural municipalities have way larger populations than we will ever have. So that's where the decision came from. And it was a business decision. And so I want you to think about that as well.
Thank you. Ellen?
If my memory is correct, initially it was about that one councillor wanted to be busier. At the time when it first came up, he specifically told me that. And I think when time went on, that was added to it. Could we save something? Or however, if you go from, for example, from 10 to 7 or whatever the magic number would be, the other councillors are going to be busier. They're going to have more jobs, and so they need to be compensated accordingly. So does one really save money?
Okay, thank you. Adina, please.
I just got one other thing. I see everything being more equally balanced as a great thing. I also see the idea of having 9 or 7 divisions as potentially could be a great idea. The thing I don't like is what it's causing between the divisions, the upset, all the public meetings that were held last time. I just don't like the tension and the fighting and that it cost last time. So I guess the thing is, right now, it's working. Do we want to go through that again? Like, I just feel like I've just been through all that with COVID. Do I want to go through that again with, changing up the divisions?
Okay, thank you. I think I'm open to direction if somebody's ready to make, we have a number of options, and I'm not trying to rush this if there's more discussion needed, but there are a number of options, 3 options put in front of us, but we can create another one if we need to.
Well, I think the one to start with would be to make a motion that electoral boundaries remain as they are and don't get reviewed. That's where we start with that one, I think. Is that the proper starting place? Option 1, sorry.
You're making a motion that we
Yeah.
can go with option 1? Okay. Any further discussion? Neil, please.
Would we have any public engagement, like a newsletter, or just it's done?
Okay. Ready for Dan?
Option 1 is continue with status quo, no change, so.
That's right. Yeah,
Okay.
that's right. Kelly, please.
I would like to have a recorded vote, please.
Okay, we will do that. Call for the question. All in favor of the motion, please indicate.
Yeah, so Councillor Johnson, no, hang on. We'll record the affirmative if you can keep your hands up. Councillor Philpott, Councillor Unruh, Councillor Screever, Reeve Dirksen, Councillor Holly Johnson. Opposed?
Opposed?
Opposed, Councillor Neil Johnson, Councillor Chrisman, Councillor Skanderup. Yeah. Councillor Short, Councillor Kopp.
Okay, the motion is carried. Is it?
Defeated.
Defeated. It's defeated?
It was a tied vote,
Oh,
wasn't
tied
it?
vote, okay.
Yeah, so it's defeated.
Neil and then Kelly, please.
I'm only slightly opposed to that. The reason I vote against it, I like this public engagement thing. Like, I'm making a call for, particularly in my area, Craig's, where I'm giving away votes. Everything works here quite fine, but I'm giving away their right to have equal proper representation. And I would like some kind of flyer to go out, and if they mail them back and give me that go ahead on that, I'm totally cool to leave it the way it is. I think it's excellent the way it's working.
Okay, thanks. Kelly?
Yeah, and mine was very similar. I would like to make a motion that council do public engagement, both electronic and paper, getting ratepayers' opinion on the discussion. On I guess we need to be more defined than that. We need to take 2 or 3 proposals for redrawing our divisional lines. That's my motion.
Okay, thank you.
I'll try. So I would like to take this, the motion is to take this to our public, getting their input on redrawing divisional lines to make our numbers more proportionate to each other.
With 10 councillors
10 councillors.
and multiple options.
Electronic and paper.
Okay,
I see multiple options. I think for a clearer picture, if we could provide them with 1 or 2 or 3 options, would that make sense to staff, or do you think not?
Matt, please.
There is a level of effort that goes into developing the maps. I wonder if it might be simpler to just ask the question of the electorate whether this is a priority area that we put additional resources into. And what that ends up looking like, you know, we'll figure that out in next steps. But I think the first question is, do you want us to spend your time and your resources on this issue?
I'll make that motion.
So you're
I'm
altering
retracting my original motion, and just to get the electorate's opinion on
how big a priority this is?
public priority
Okay,
for 10 divisions. I want to be clear.
okay, thank you. Ellen, please.
I'd like to remind council that this was just done a good 2 years ago, and we had quite a bit of feedback, and it was, you had the percentage, Holly. It was a percentage that they did not want to have a change.
Thank you, Neil.
I'm kind of in favor of it, just the way it was described there. If we go ahead and do an election and we're out of proportion and everything, we've done nothing about it. Even a handout is doing something about it, even if it takes us 3 years to respond to it. So I like the way you reworded that, Kellen.
Okay, thank you. Dan?
I'd like the public engagement to include some information about what's happening and highlight the discrepancy between the population densities right now, and a brief explanation as to that it happens. This is a regular occurrence on the provincial and federal level. I don't want to just ask them, do you want to change? Because then we're like, well, no, everything's working, we're good. They need to understand that what the reason for doing this is. So if it can be highlighted that there's a major discrepancy and that it's a normal occurrence in other levels of government, I think that would be huge.
But in fact, it's both of those jurisdictions are quite different than what ours is in terms of the legislation that regulates them. So I guess.
But we're still a democracy.
Always, yep. Matt and then Holly.
Yeah, so I would propose once the vote's called on the motion, administration would do a little bit of legwork and we'd bring the plan back to council before we just kick it out virtually, right? We want to make sure that we're getting some of these details that Councillor Short is highlighting, so that it's one thing to ask a question, but you want to make sure you're providing the right background information and phrasing it right to get the legitimate feedback that you're looking for.
And simply not just creating more questions. Holly, please.
I would just suggest that it also stays fairly simple. I know people don't like to read a lot of what they seem to get, so simpler is better. You know, I think certainly have the current populations for each division. They should know that, and then, you know, what the goal is. But I wouldn't provide too much information that can get confusing as well. We're asking a simple question, and we just need an answer, nothing more than that.
Thank you. Ellen, please.
I would like to add that it's not dictated by the MGA, and also that I lost my train of thought, but that it's not dictated by the MGA, and so that it's just an idea that came from within here.
Okay, thank you. Ready for the question? All in favor of the motion, please indicate. That's carried. Opposed? Sorry. Okay, that's carried.
Can you read that motion? No, I'm okay with it, but.
You'll see it in the unapproved minutes that get circulated, but it basically says we're going to reach out to, council's given administration direction to bring a plan for a public engagement on the electoral division population redistribution.
Yeah, that shouldn't take a whole pile of work just to do that one. Oh, cool.
Okay, thank you, Lane. Kelly, please.
Just to close that off, it also ticks a box of engaging with public as well. So I like the idea very much.
Thank you. Let's move on to 9.5, requests for functions of council. Are there any requests for functions of council? Holly, please. Oh, Kelly.
I'm wondering, I did go ahead and book in on Monday with Alberta Health Services, Palliser Health Triangle. It's a noon to 3 o'clock meeting. The agenda intrigued me, and so I'm wondering if that would be a function of council.
Okay, thank you. Dina, you have a question?
Well, I just wanted to say I also signed up for that.
Okay.
And Lynette.
A motion would be appropriate for that to be a function of council, I think. Go ahead, Holly.
I make that motion be a function of council.
Okay, all in favor that Monday's meeting with healthcare be a function of council? That's carried. Thank you. Holly.
Does that mean we have the commitment to finish the committee of the whole by lunchtime?
I think so. I think so. Yeah, we're meeting Monday morning for committee of the whole, and this meeting will follow that immediately over lunch, starting at lunch. Any other functions of council, Holly, please?
I can't find it now. I know there is a committee, there's a meeting for something on the 20th in the morning, and I know that we're in Grand Prairie at the time, but I remember there being something and wondering if someone who wasn't at Grand Prairie wanted to join with it, but I cannot tell you what that was, and I cannot find the emails. Anybody else know? Probably. Okay, that looked really interesting to me. That's what I remember it.
Matt. Please.
Yeah, that is the invite to the virtual Community Justice Center engagement sessions, January 20th, 9:30 to 11:30 a.m. So what's working with how justice is delivered in Alberta today? What's not working with how justice is delivered? What collaboration within the criminal justice system exists today? What's working, not working? One of those kind of sessions.
Okay. Yeah, okay. As a function of council, Kelly?
I would be able to attend that if council so chose me to attend. I can make that happen.
Okay, Neil, please.
Being that policing's in a big provincial movement right now, I think we should have a person there just to be in the loop. So I move that it's function.
Become a function of council for Kelly. Thank you. All in favor, please indicate. That's carried. Thank you. Any other functions of council? Lynette, please.
Well, the one, you actually have it on the agenda as Alberta Care Seminar.
Great.
In the past, has somebody gone to that? Like, is that worth going to? At the recycling meeting the other night, Ray Jessica said that he generally goes to that one and has felt that it's been worthwhile, because a lot of it has to do with recycling. So it'd either be Neil from the Solid Waste Association or I to go, but.
Right, okay, thank you. Neil?
I'll make that motion too, but it'll be Lynette. I can't do that one.
Can you attend that one? Okay, so the motion is that become a function of council for you to attend on our behalf. So, all in favor, please indicate. It's carried, thank you. Okay. Any others? Seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you. And does that answer enough of our questions with regard to the Alberta Care on 9.51? I think we wanted that on our agenda, so I think we've got that covered. Let's move on to our Director of Municipal Services report. Mr. Mark Harpery, welcome.
Happy New Year. It's great to be back.
Yes.
Had a great break. Can't really say that my team had the break that some of the rest of us did, but anyway, this report was prepared about mid-December, so obviously with the office closure and stuff, we're missing some details. I guess I'd really just like to highlight on that I've been here for approximately 14 and a half years, and I have not seen rain in December before. And that rain obviously produced some havoc for our region. More and more these days, I can advise council that people do not stay home. They always like to be on the move. They always have destinations to go. And with that come the risks of us performing our duties and getting out there to ensure that roads are safe for our motoring public. So we were out on the skating rinks, better known as our roads, along with everybody else. I think things were handled as appropriately and as timely as we possibly could, considering the inherent risks of it. We didn't get through it without some incident. Nothing major, thankfully, towards the corporation, but we did have some minor incident with equipment doing their duties. With that though, I just want to express to council that I think it's kudos to our staff for always putting the best foot forward, serving our public and those people traveling through our region to make sure that they're getting to their destination as safely as possible. The message can never be strong enough that people really, really do need to consider whether they should stay home or whether they absolutely need to be on the road going somewhere. But I can't control everybody and tell them what they can and cannot do in life. So kudos to my staff on that, recognizing them for their efforts. We had people on the roads Christmas Day taking care of roads for us. We had people throughout Boxing Day and throughout that closure of the office here right through until New Year's anyway. So I want to express our many thanks to those people on the front line taking care of that work so that everybody could enjoy the holidays as best possible. In addition to that, just kind of wrapping up the year, you know, December kind of period there, greater operators, snow. We got snow before Christmas. We had the ice after Christmas. We've had all of it. We've been constantly after this since the beginning of November. We've been through the minus 35 and minus 40 degrees Celsius temperatures as well. That's not easy on equipment, and it's not easy on our staff either. Oftentimes we will shut down our operations because when it's that cold, we break things. We break things in the field. It means more people need to go out into the field and fix those things in those extreme temperatures too. So we are constantly doing that juggling of what's most appropriate and when, but always managing that liability side with safety and risks. So maintaining the roads, truck drivers, same things with paved roads, hauling gravel whenever winter weather ceased and afforded us time to do that work. Maintenance operators, variety of assignments, primarily taking care of the hamlets, keeping those roads where people have to cross roads on foot and everything like that as well. Safety for stopping at intersections, whatnot. Vegetation management, it's been one day this year. The previous decade, we've gotten in, I don't know how many days of vegetation management because we just really haven't had much for winter weather, but we've been fighting snow and ice since the onset of November. 6 motor grader operators ordered in 2022. Latest word is they will be here in April. They're on a boat somewhere coming out of the South Americas. They're on the boat. So we're waiting patiently. And you heard from Mr. Steinley from NRSC that there were a couple water line breaks in the hamlet of Tilly, services to residences and stuff that took a little bit of effort. Manager of Engineering Planning Development Services was out throughout the Christmas break as well, helping contracted services identify and get those services repaired. And CNWP Phase 1 construction's underway. You've heard some of the stuff again from Mr. Cole Steinley there, that they've been activating services as been delivered. And we're also working on the Steveville gravel crush tender. For this council, you're not familiar with this, but the Steveville pit north of Patricia, there is an agreement in place with a property owner on the north side of the river that we are only allowed to crush in a certain period of time in the year. So we have to meet those obligations. Otherwise, we can't do any crushing at that pit. So to get our inventory in place, that is being worked on now so that we can advertise early in 2023 and get somebody in place. Other than that, yeah, it was December. We try to get through everything, close things up that we can, make it sure that we've got a good start to the new year when we get back in the office, and really that's how we rounded things out. But winter weather has been the bane of our existence so far this winter season, but we're there for everybody that needs it.
Thank you, Mark. There'll probably be some questions. Your first 2 paragraphs under operations are interesting statistics, and that's a remarkable reality to be ready for. I think too, I would acknowledge the good work that was done to try to meet the need at that point, which it's never enough, but it was, that's a staggering reality, really, when you think about it. And I think that, like, I have interest, like questions from the perspective of interest, because we have talked over the, about reducing the number of grader operators and all that, which certainly works most of the time, right? Are we well enough equipped? Like, this is definitely an exception, but are we? What do we do, and what do you do in those circumstances? Do you engage surrounding or other services that are already out there? Maybe people plowing oil field roads and that kind of thing. Like, I'm just interested how you approach that, because the last month and a half is a very difficult reality to be completely ready for because of.
Yeah, and you go back to your Boy Scout days or whatever, and you always want to be planned for the worst and hope for the best, right? But you always want to have everything at the ready and be prepared. That in essence is what we try to do. We've been working off of a decade of reasonable Southern Alberta weather with no extreme weather events. Prior to that, it was 2010, 2011, 2012. And as we do that trending, we talked about that in our budget preparation, whatnot. We're always looking at that 3. I'm trying to look at 5-year trends on sorts of things and whatnot. I don't like making huge movements in my budget to say we're axing all of this. Matt knows that because we've been around each other for that decade or better. It's an overtime as to how you adjust things. On paper, between the manager of operations, myself, 8 grader operators, 7 grader operators, 8 works well. 7 really puts you on the cusp of everything and whether you have the ability to respond for those more extreme events. When you've had a decade of not having extreme event, it's the reality just isn't there. When you get it, we've got it out already where we get pricing from local contractors for grading services, for hauling gravel, for whatever. What we don't have in this region is somebody to assist with plow trucks. The only people that have plow trucks are Volker Stabbit. they're committed to the province. All of the resources get thrown at Highway 1 and Highway 36. They're not coming to help us. If anything, maybe there's opportunities some days we should be helping them. But that's some provincial level stuff that we have to contend with. And we've always had ongoing conversations with the province on that. It's a matter of being tied to their systems and meeting their service level expectations and all those sorts of fun things. On the grader side of things, a little bit easier, but not many people actually have the ability to throw a snow wing on the side of their grader for wing and snow back. But at least getting some roads open and stuff, or when there's vacancies, vacations, illness, those kinds of leaves of absence, contracted services can be brought in. I will remind council, we have an obligation to the collective agreement with the union. So we have to make sure that nobody's without work that is working in the union side before we move to any of those kinds of levels, right? But if all of our people are out and we need to catch up, we do ramp up with contractors. We will run staff 10-hour days, 12-hour days. I try to stay out of the non-daylight hours as best we can, because if it's the end of the day and something breaks down, it's not the most convenient thing to get it spun back up for the next day, right? But starting a little bit earlier in the morning and stuff. Our plow trucks will start at 4 o'clock in the morning, trying to beat the morning rush hour. Grader operators, I don't like to do that so much because they're a little more remote, and we like to start them daylight. But we try to spin things up like that. We always have those costs on hand that if we need to phone somebody, we can call for assistance. Just some of those services, they're not always available in our region to be there for us. So I hope that answers.
Yeah, do you work with the neighboring municipalities? And because I look, like, we're up in the north end, and realistically there's some roads there that don't get first attention, which is as it probably should be. But for example, with Wheatland or something like that, like I look at, can I use an example just as a, for instance, highway, the Duck Lake Road, which is managed with plow trucks because it's pavement, good pavement, and serves a large area. But west of that, if you look on the map, County Newell has a 2 mile stretch, which is more of a pain than it's worth. Like, do we work with Wheatland to say, you know, you got your plow up there, just cover the two, you know? I'm curious about that, not prescribing what needs to happen. I'm just wondering.
Yeah, so I guess in response to that, when it came down to doing the ICF agreements and stuff like that, both municipalities really agreed we would take care of our own infrastructure. We didn't really have a need to call upon one or another to help. That's probably one of the most likely situations that we could maybe leverage a little bit more, because to the north, we really have nothing to do with special areas, although they've probably put just as many, if not more, hours on our snow blower as what we have, because they've been under snow and we haven't. We've also had equipment down in Tabor. Again, we got a river bordering us, so it's provincial highways that connect, and that's all. Yeah, Wheatland would really be about the only one that maybe for those few miles of road we could talk about. And Duck Lake Road is an interesting one, because when County Council requested us to proceed with paving that road, the road in Wheatland County did not get paved at the same time. So there may be some trade-offs, and I guess, you know, really some of that comes back to is where does council want to see us get involved, or how do we want to get involved? Because depending on how much work and our local priority versus a need or want, we can spend time and money running around elsewhere, and then is it at a cost recovery basis, or is it at a for-profit basis? How should we look at those things if we're going to step outside of those boundaries? And I don't think those boundaries are much different than working with the mini-minis in our boundaries, being City of Brooks, Village of Rosemary, Dutchess, right? We just haven't really explored that one a whole lot. And I'll say that really in the 15 years here, I think it was the first 3 or 4 that I probably had the best communication with my peers surrounding us. But once I kind of got my feet wet and team was doing as they needed to be doing, and we got totally capable, competent staff doing the job they need to do between truck drivers, graders and stuff, I can say that they don't really engage us and we really don't engage them. And that's probably a bit of a downfall or pitfall in some of this. We talk twice a year at our conference, and if we got anything major that we need to relate on, we do, but haven't really seen it, but we can definitely look at exploring some of those options if that's
well, I think credibly, you haven't needed to, right? I mean, the last month has been an exception, as you've indicated, for 10 years or more. So, but it might be the time to say, you know, under certain circumstances, we might get things done quicker. And at the end of the day, that's the goal, right? How do we?
Yeah.
It's not about even who does it as much as got to get the roads open, got to that sort of thing. So it was just we can visit some more about it too.
And ICF agreements and stuff are coming up here in the next year or two with each and every one of them. So those are things that you guys will be able to dabble with as well, and we can carry on conversation if there's things that need to be shaped better. So,
any other questions? Neil, please.
Just a comment. The only call I had about the roads was from a ratepayer called Vern Hawkinson down on One Tree Road. Phoned to congratulate me and to relay to the county staff for what a great job they did. Had the whole One Tree Road sanded from one end to the other, right through the worst of it. So that's pretty good. He's a tough cookie. Like, he wouldn't give it if he didn't mean it.
Okay, Holly, thank you.
Do we know when the gravel report will be done? About if the gravel search report, what would you call that?
I'll have an update for you next month on that through engineering. So.
In the line of bouquets, I did something a little bit different over the holidays. I educated on Newell Connect when I got phone calls. But I took it one step further and I said, but this time I'll do it for you. And I went through Newell Connect. I forwarded all my communications from Newell Connect to the ratepayers, and I showed them that this does work. So I just wanted to share that with the rest of council, that sharing that information and letting them know that it does come to conclusion through the electronic means. Not for everybody, but for some ratepayers, they can learn. Okay?
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none. Thank you, Mark. A motion to accept the municipal services report, please. Greg.
I'd like to make that motion.
Thank you. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, and extend our appreciation to your staff for the good work over the last 2 months. Yeah, thank you. Post-agenda items. I don't think we had any, unless some have come up for anyone through the course of the meeting. Information items are presented there. Any other questions under other business, or Kelly, please?
Yeah, I had a question on the check register. Two, in fact. Brody Ketchmark, it might be just a typo, but in the description it says 2020 honorarium. Would that be 2022 honorarium? Because the check rate below it is for 2022, so I wonder if it was just a typo. And then the second question is a direct deposit to Becerris, and the description is blank. With a B, yep, down at the bottom of the list. That's just so that you know I read the whole list. One at the top, one at the bottom, no.
Matt, please, thanks.
Yeah, so that one from Viserys is for inventory here.
So they do our annual inventory?
No, inventory items. So a boom buster nozzle, a Hypro spray gun, IS turbo spray gun is what I'm seeing here.
So for fire departments or?
I can answer that question. That is for ag services.
Oh, okay. And just so you see on the list, it comes up blank if you don't fill it in.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Holly? Mike?
I had a question about boots, since a number of pair of boots were bought in this past month. Who do we buy boots for?
Oh, do you want me to name them all? Yeah, there's a boot allowance that your field staff would get. So typically your ag services, most of Mark's guys would get them. A couple of the IT folks would get them for working in the shop as well. You need some boots.
Made for walking. Any other questions? Seeing none, a motion to move into camera. Amanda, please. All in favor that we move to camera? It's carried. Thank you.